A few weeks ago, ESPN went on a firing spree, letting go of key personnel that's been with the network for a number of years. And according to reports, two of the people that were released are now on the New York Knicks radar, as they could potentially pounce, looking to add them to the broadcasting booth for next season. Also, James Dolan, the New York Knicks owner, is also making headlines as he's clarifying his comments on wanting to potentially sell the teams that he owns. We're going to look into this and so much more today. Let's get started. Jeff Van Gundy, a former New York Knicks head coach, potentially could be returning to the New York Knicks, but it could be in a new role. Now, if you've been following the Knicks like I have since the 90s, Jeff Van Gundy's name has been synonymous with the New York Knicks because he's been one of the best coaches in recent memory for the Knicks. Obviously, we have a lot of great memories to remember Jeff Van Gundy by. If you remember him with a lot of fights, him clinging on and hanging on to key players' legs, Jeff Van Gundy over the years has given us a lot of key moments. And not only that, when he's left the Knicks and he joined the broadcasting booth for ESPN and ABC, he gave us even more memories. But as I mentioned at the top of the show, ESPN made a lot of key releases, and one of them was Jeff Van Gundy. And according to a report from Bob Rassman of the New York Daily News, he says that the New York Knicks might turn to some familiar faces for part-time analyst duties on MSG networks, namely those of Mark Jackson and Jeff Van Gundy, those two key members that were released by ESPN when they were on a firing spree. And according to a report from Bob Rassman of the New York Daily News, he says that the New York Knicks might turn to some familiar faces for part-time analyst duties on MSG networks, namely those of Mark Jackson and Jeff Van Gundy, those two key members that were released by ESPN when they were on a firing spree. The report goes on to state that Mike Breen and Walt Clyde Frazier are back on MSG's primary mics for the 2023-2024 season. But the latter told the Knicks that he would cut back on road games earlier this season, essentially meaning that Walt Clyde Frazier stated that he doesn't want to do as many road games as he did last season. So because of that, opportunity does create itself. And according to Bob Rassman of the New York Daily News, he stated, NBA TV sources say MSG Network brass is considering a few different voices to fill in for Frazier, including Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson. Watching both Jackson, Jeff Van Gundy in a combo or singularly reunite with their former ESPN partner Mike Breen would not only be great TV, but tremendous theater as well. Knick fans are well versed in both Mark Jackson, a former New York Knick player, and Jeff Van Gundy, a former New York Knicks head coach. I think I speak for everybody when I say, even when you've seen the ESPN on ABC broadcast, Mike Breen, Jeff Van Gundy, and Mark Jackson are magic. Must watch. You have to see it. If the New York Knicks could pull this off, it would absolutely be amazing. I would love it. Everybody around the league, not only the NBA, would likely tune into Knicks games just to see that dynamic again. Because it's something that everybody's going to miss. A lot of people didn't like those firings. They wanted to see Mike Breen, Mark Jackson, and Jeff Van Gundy continue. Nothing was wrong with that dynamic or that trio. They were working perfectly together. They had great chemistry. They knew what to say around each other. They knew how to play off of each other. Remember Mark Jackson? Mama, there goes that man. And the way they all responded and reacted to that and reacted to each other. The games were interesting, but the broadcast, that was also so interesting as well too. When you have a great game and you have those personalities calling the game, all you can do is smile and enjoy it so much more. No knock to Walt Clyde Frazier. He's a legend. I love him, and I can't wait to hear him and Mike come back next season. But obviously, you want to hear different voices sometimes too. And hearing these guys reunite again, sometimes, maybe not all the time, but sometimes, it would be a breath of fresh air. I would love it. I would welcome it. I have no qualms or issues at all. I love Jeff Van Gundy. Of course, a lot of people would love to see him return as the New York Knicks head coach now, or even be on the coaching staff on the bench. But you know what? He had his time. He had his run. I'm very thankful for it. I remember it well. Let's have him come home, come back in a new role, come back where he can give back to the New York Knicks in a different way, the fans in a different way, the youth in a different way, because his basketball mind is so high level. He is so high IQ. Anybody who watches him, hears him talk about the game, is going to benefit from it. So all the youth that watches the game on MSG networks, if this happens, you're going to benefit from it too. I love this. I love hearing this. I hope the New York Knicks can make this move happen, because if it does, oh my goodness, it's going to be even more must-see basketball for me next season, watching all these personalities come together again. Please, MSG Networks, New York, Knicks, please get this done, because I'm telling you, it would not only mean a lot to me, I think really it would mean a lot to a lot of people around the league. James Dolan, the New York Knicks owner, recently clarified his statements on selling the New York Knicks. Now, in a recent interview with the New York Times, James Dolan was interviewed, and he made some select comments about owning teams. More or less said it's sleepy work, it's boring, he doesn't really enjoy it much. And a lot of people took that and ran with it and thought he meant that he didn't like owning the Knicks and he wanted to sell the team or teams, the Knicks and the Rangers. So, of course, because he heard that and there was a little bit of backlash, he had to take a statement stance about it, and he went to Barron's and recently gave them a statement and clarified what he meant regarding his statements with the New York Times. James Dolan stated, "People misunderstood my comments to the Times. I love the teams and enjoy being the owner/manager of them. There is absolutely no thought of a full sale of the teams." He continues by stating that he has no plans to sell the New York Knicks or the Rangers, and he even told the publication, Barron's I'm stating here, that he has no need for cash and the value of the assets that he currently has keeps going up every year. What you sell today may look like a cheap price later. So clearly, Dolan does not want to sell the New York Knicks. And shame on anybody who actually believed that he wanted to sell the Knicks or the Rangers. Those two teams for him are making him a ton of money. There is no need for him to sell the teams. He's been out of the way, especially for the New York Knicks, for a very, very long time. So because of that, he's left a lot of the criticism on the table. He still gets criticism as being one of the worst owners in the NBA. I think a lot of people have mentioned that. There have been articles written about that. But because he's less involved in the New York Knicks and he's less in the spotlight, there's less to talk about. And that's obviously a good thing for the New York Knicks. But I don't know why he even did this interview, because he was talking more about the Las Vegas sphere that he's really creating and how it's going to make him even more money. And maybe when that happens, we can talk about potentially Dolan thinking about selling even a majority stake or a minority stake in the New York Knicks to somebody else. But until then, there's really nothing to talk about, and I'm glad he went out there and clarified his statements and didn't just leave it out there and open. A lot of times he would have done that because he honestly doesn't really care. But he heard the little bit of a backlash that he got, and because of that, he didn't want to let that stand, and he went ahead and clarified his statement with Barron's, giving them that exclusive interview and basically saying, hey, they misunderstood me. I love owning the Knicks. I love owning the Rangers. They still help make me a lot of money. They're going to continue to do that. Why would I sell them? It doesn't make any sense. That's right. He's right. It doesn't make sense. Whoever took the New York Times article that he did and ran with it and thought that the best story out of it could have been, yeah, the New York Knicks are likely going to sell the team, James Dolan's going to sell the team, that's not going to be the case. It never was before that article was written, not the case now that that article has been released, and it's not going to be the case in the next few years. The only times we should realistically ever talk about James Dolan selling the New York Knicks ever again is if a major scandal comes out that makes us talk about it, or that Sphere in Las Vegas becomes complete, becomes one of the biggest things ever, and he wants to focus all his attention on that and nothing else. And if that happens, maybe the door opens, slightly opens, for the New York Knicks potentially to have a new owner. But until then, there's really nothing to talk about. I'm happy James Dolan went out there and clarified his comments. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you think the New York Knicks are eventually going to get sold by James Dolan? Or do you think that James Dolan is going to own the New York Knicks for as long as he possibly can, until he can't own them for any longer? Let me know in the comments below, because I really would love to hear your thoughts. But that's going to do it for this video, guys. If you like it, please go ahead and smash that like button. Don't forget to leave a comment below. And of course, guys, please subscribe to the channel. But until next time, Knick fans, peace.